Making selections in Maya is, on the face of it, quite simple. You can click an object, and you can shift-click another object to add to your selection as many times as you like. You can also shift-click once again to remove that object from your selection. And the interesting thing about this is if you wanted to swap your selections between two different groups, all you have to do is hold down Shift and click and drag over all of them, and you can swap back and forth. Shift toggles back and forth between selected or not selected. On the other hand, Control, you can see that the icon changes to a minus sign when I press Control, will always remove from your selection. Control and Shift, however, will always add. You can see it changed the icon to a plus sign. Now it always adds. No matter how many times I drag, it'll always add. And that is the basics of selection. Those same rules also apply when you're working with components. So I can shift to add to my selection, and I can shift to remove from my selection. I can control to always remove, control shift to always add. However, there are some neat tricks that you can use to make your selections go much faster. So if I go to, say, edge mode, if I click on this edge, I can use shift click and add all the way around the entire sphere to get this edge loop selected. But I have to do that one edge at a time, and that is an incredibly tedious way to do it. Instead, it is much faster to simply mouse over one of the edges and double click, and that gets the entire edge loop. It also works going up and down, but if I do this one, you can see it stops right here. And that is because it is looking for a cross intersection, and when it hits what's called a pole, it does not know which one of these edges it needs to continue on from. So if I want to make this complete circle, I'd have to do it manually and shift double click the one on the other side. If I double click and then shift double click, I can add as many edge loops to my selection as I want. And of course, shift double click does not work to remove them, unfortunately. When you're doing the double clicks, shift will only add to it. So if I want to remove it, I have to use control. If I want to do a loop of these faces going all the way around like this, if I just double click a face, it doesn't know if I want to go left and right or up and down. They look basically the same to Maya. So what happens is, it just selects the entire object. If I want to go in a loop from here to there, around, I have to hold down Shift and double click the one next to it. And that gets the entire loop of faces. The same is true with vertices. Click one, doesn't know if I want to do up and down or left and right, so I have to do Shift double click next to it to go all the way around. If I go up and down, Shift double click above it, goes up and down. Another neat thing is if I click one edge and then Shift double click next to it, it'll select a ring of edges instead of a loop of edges. That's the loop. This is a ring. It's usually how I see it described anyway. I'll stay with the edges for the time being. I can also say, if I only want to select between here and here, not the entire loop, I hold down Shift and double click over here, and I'll select all the ones in between. I keep doing that if I want to. Just gotta make sure I click once and then Shift double click over here, make sure I don't miss. I can do as many times as I want. Only problem with this is because it's a loop, what it does is it looks for the shortest path. Yeah, you see it went that way instead of this way, because it takes the shortest path. So you have to think about if you do want to go from here to there, it's best to do it in small increments like that. Same thing also works with faces and with vertices. Another neat trick is if you select, say, just one vertex, you can grow your selection outwards from the initial vertex. And as with the greater than symbol on your keyboard. And less than will shrink it back down. Most keyboards I'm familiar with, the greater than is shift period, and less than is shift comma. Greater than is little pointy arrow thing that goes to the right, and less than is one that goes to the left. You can do this with any selected component. You can select an edge loop and grow that outwards and shrink it back down again. You'd be surprised how often that comes in handy. And the last trick I want to show you for selections is something called the soft selection. Once again, I'm just going to select one vertex up here. And the soft selection creates a gradient of completely selected, partially selected, less selected, less selected, into completely unselected. And to do that, you press B. Now, when things are yellow, that means it's all being selected at the moment. So I'm going to hold down letter B. B is in brush. And then left mouse click and drag to the left. I'm going to do that over and over again until I can see this circle. See that circle that showed up? It was too large. That's why it was all yellow. At some point, I must have made this really, really big. So B and left mouse, you can adjust the radius of this circle that controls the drop off. And you can see bright yellow to orange to red to black shows you how much these vertices are being influenced by this initial selection. And what I can do now is move this, and it moves sort of squishy like that. Instead of a single vertex or even a group of vertices, it is moving with a drop off. So that's how I can make an egg. Quick warning, this does not turn off just because I go back to object mode and then return to component mode. It turns back on again. And I have seen this happen to so many students. At some point, they use the soft select tool, but they made it so large that a small object like this would turn entirely yellow. And then they go to component mode, click on something, and the whole object turns yellow, and now it all moves, and they can't turn it off. Well, if that happens to you, two things you can do. Either hold down B and drag it down so you can actually see what's going on, or if you don't need to use the soft selection right now, just tap B one more time, and it turns off. I recommend whenever you use a soft selection mode, always turn it off when you're done. Press B to turn on, and then B again to turn it off. Otherwise, it's going to show up when you don't expect it, and it's going to cause confusion. And that's all I have to say about selections.